Welcome to DAX Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of DAX Machina. Joining me in the studio tonight is my youngest spawn, Noah Roberts, aka Jormungandr, for those of you of the Norse pantheon. We're gonna have a good show for you guys tonight. Looks like it's just gonna be me and Noah tonight. Everybody has had something to do tonight, so just gonna put up with the two of us tonight. So hopefully you guys will stick with us. It's still going to be a good show. Noah, how you doing, buddy?
A little tired, but overall, can't complain. How are you doing, though? That's the real question.
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay adjacent. I had the procedure done on my back yesterday. For those of you who have been keeping me in your prayers, I certainly appreciate it. But I had the procedure done, and then proceeded to sleep for almost 24 hours. Was pretty wiped out. I guess I was kind of out of it when I came out of there too.
Yeah.
My wife and the boys have been regaling me with things I said while I was kind of out of it, which is still pretty funny.
He was practically snapping his neck in the car ride home. He was just like slumped forward in the chair, just gone. Absolutely just sawing logs.
Well, I'm awake now. I slept for almost like 20, 21, 22 hours.
I mean, he's already a pretty
minor
prolific
breaks.
sleeper, so I mean.
Well, I try not to sleep that much. I got absolutely nothing done. That's why the show didn't get posted until today. I usually have the show up at least a day or two in advance, so everybody knows when the show is and what it's going to be about. But that's the reason I didn't get this one up, because I just didn't have it done before the procedure. I figured I'd be fine, like the other times I'd had shots in my back. I figured I'd go get the procedure done, come home, set the show up, and then get a few things done. But I came home and I don't even remember eating, but they said I ate, and then I was out.
He ate like he had the munchies. My dude had a triple cheeseburger. All of his large fry. Wait, no, we didn't get large. My bad. All of his fries, right? He had like a quarter of my burger. He had 3 of Mom's chicken strips and some of her fries.
I was hungry.
He had a chocolate shake and wanted more ice cream afterwards.
Well, I always want more ice cream. That's just, there's never enough ice cream.
And after we were done eating, I was like, well, Dad, was that enough food? And he goes, at least for the moment.
Yeah, and I don't remember that.
Like, well, I listen, I can put food down. And I was even over there like, holy crap.
Robert Deason's bears have to eat. Yeah, that's... Oh, Jeff Bridges says, I feel for you, DA. I had the ACDF. I'm fused from C4 to C7 with hardware. Oh, my man. I feel for you, brother. I am so sorry. They said it's going to take about 6 weeks for it to go into full effect. So in the meantime, I'm going to have some pretty serious discomfort. But I can say that it's better than I expected it to be. So all things considered, I'm in pretty good shape after the procedure. I'm not going to be doing cartwheels and jogging down the street anytime soon, but I do feel like I'm able to get up without as much problem as I was having before. It is still kind of painful, but it's I think it's at a point I can live with it until it continues to improve, like they're saying. Eric Testrom says, DA, were you ginger enough to fight Wendigo or Bigfoot for the jerky? No, I don't think so. I'll just get my own jerky. They can fight over that.
Yeah, that's the big pass. Big pass. Even in his mind-addled state, I don't think he would have fought a Wendigo or a Bigfoot for beef jerky. I think he'd been like, no, they can have it.
Well, considering that it was you and Nick pretty much had to carry me in the house.
Yeah. You almost fell over on the steps going in, and I had to like get underneath you.
No, my hat's off to you guys. That's a lot of dude to have to carry.
Well, someone's got to do it.
Well, and enough about me, folks. We're gonna get on into the topic for the night. I know there is a topic, and we will eventually get to it.
There oftentimes is one, but
Sometimes sometimes the topic is merely a guideline, really. But yeah, we will eventually get to the point. The point that I really wanted to get to is I'm starting to see not just the usual number of sighting reports coming in. We're starting to get some from other sources, which is kind of different. I know Nick Valente gets more than I do, but I've been starting to get quite a few here in the Midwest. And one of the things, like, well, you get the guest we had the other night when we talked about the Girl Scout murders, Mike from Abnormal Investigations. My hat is off to Mike because Mike started doing something that I'm going to be doing from now on. He's starting to oh, actually he's been doing it for a bit, but he's documenting the phase of the moon, which is not something I'd seen anybody else do, and it's becoming shockingly relevant. Just like when I was in law enforcement, we used to jokingly say, "God, I hope I'm not on duty tonight. There's going to be a full moon," or stuff like that. But the full moon does affect people, believe it or not. Our call volumes went insane on nights of the full moon. When I worked at the hospital, the way people acted was just crazy. Full moon does affect people. Do what?
I said my bad.
And what just you?
The hospital went crazy, and I was just, it was all me.
Jane Doe says the term lunacy exists for a reason. Exactly. But anybody that's worked in any kind of capacity as a first responder will tell you the full moon does affect the behavior of people. So we can also start identifying the behaviors of certain animals based on the phases of the moon. Linda Bryant says it affects my husband. I don't even know who he is.
And that's the thing, right? It's like if the moon has the capability of controlling our tide on the planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
What can it do to us? Like, obviously, like the exchange of gravity affects the water, and we're not water, but we're on this planet too.
and we are made up of large part, of water. I mean, they say humans are what, like 60 or 70% water,
something like that.
So if this affects water, if it's affecting liquid on the planet, then it's pretty much affecting every living thing. Large losses, bartenders and bouncers also. Yeah, anybody that's worked in anything where you might have the potential for somebody acting out, specifically, I pointed out law enforcement, first responders, bartenders definitely, and bouncers. I've worked as a bouncer before. I can certainly attest to that. But the moon, the phase of the moon does affect pretty much everything. And I really want to thank Mike over at Abnormal Investigations for pointing that out. He's the first person I'd heard doing that, and that's now something I'm trying to do. If I can get an exact date on an account, because sometimes you get an account. This happened to me sometime 20 years ago. Those little more difficult to get a phase of the moon on unless you've got an actual date. If they say it happened on September 13th, 2018, 2015, I can Google search that and find out what the phase of the moon was. However, if they say I think this was in September or October, of 1982, anybody's guess. So I'm trying to allocate these when and if I can, because I do believe it's going to be relevant. I think it's going to help us start pinpointing certain activities. Sorry, again, I'm trying to get comfortable. Sorry about that.
Well, I mean, there's been plenty of research put into how the full moon affects the behaviors of already known animals. I mean, look at the behaviors of dogs under the full moon. Look at the behaviors of
Wolves.
wolves, house cats. We we would be naive to say that the full moon doesn't affect us.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
genuinely. And these creatures that we don't know much about, be it if they're, a dogman or a werewolf or, Bigfoot, beast of Javadan, whatever, it's like, who's to say that the moon doesn't affect them if we don't even know if it really affects us?
Well, that's something I'm going to try to do. And it doesn't matter what cryptid it is. I think documenting the phase of the moon helps to determine patterns of behavior. And I don't think it just applies to Dogman or Bigfoot. I think any report I take from now on, I'm going to try to get at least within a day or two of the actual date of when it happened, if they remember. And then when I go back and make my notes, I'm going to look it up and say, okay, it was on September 13th, 2019. This was the phase of the moon, that kind of thing. So when I can, I want to document that. And again, I want to thank Mike over at Abnormal Investigations for pointing that out, because it is just a brilliant piece of insight. Mike, kudos, buddy. Abnormal Investigation says, Mike, he said, I believe they take advantage of the light from the moon in the lower light phases. I think you're right, because anybody that's been out, doing any kind of hunting at all, especially if you get out to your deer stand. Like I always used to like to get out to mine really early, because I wanted to give everything time to settle down around me. If you get out there during a night of a full moon, you can almost see to shoot by. I mean, it's bright enough that your eyes will adjust, and you've got plenty of light to operate by. I didn't even use a flashlight on nights of the full moon. Now, if you've got a waxing or waning moon, now then you've got a problem. 443 Big Vic says loves the hat. It's the same black leather hat I've had for almost 2 years now. But William Nighthawk made the band for me. I really appreciate William doing that. Really appreciate that, man. Just an absolutely gorgeous hat band, and it's handmade. Made for me. He made it specifically for me, and as you guys know, William's a Lakota shaman. He made that and my medicine bag, so those are both very near and dear to me, and always will be. Richard Cox says there have been studies done on the moon's gravitational effects on people with mental illness. And I don't want to say anything negative, try to negative stereotype, but we had certain patients that had, well, some that had TBIs and some that were autistic, that would get violent on nights around the full moon. And I just noticed that from the hospital, because our incident reports tended to go up. I was usually very good at de-escalation, and it's one of the things I prided myself on, because I know I used to drill it into the heads of the younger officers that anytime you go hands-on, you run a very high risk of somebody getting hurt. It might be them, it might be you, it might be another officer. But if you can avoid going hands-on, avoid it at all costs. But when it's time to go hands-on, it's not time to pussyfoot around either. When the gloves come off, the gloves have got to come off. But I was generally pretty good at de-escalating people, but there were some people that just could not be brought down on a night of a full moon. Trying to see if I missed anything there. So, having said that, having looked back at some of the cases that Abnormal Investigations has relayed, and in some of the cases that I talked to, the guys were in the military, where they would, much like an after action report, these guys will know details. I always like getting a sighting report from somebody in the military, because it will, or a cop, it will read like a freaking report. They're going to, okay, this was the time of day, this is what I was doing, this is where I was at, and then they'll give you the body of information. But you always get those little headers that tell you all the pertinent information. So folks, if you do have an encounter from any time now in the future, or if you have had an encounter in the past, look back at that encounter and try to write down those key pieces of information: time, date, location, phase of the moon if you can. If not, time and date are crucial. David Martin says, what is a dogman? See, that's kind of a trick question. A lot of people have called it. There's a lot of possible answers to that. There's a lot of people have called it different things down through the centuries. It's been called a werewolf. It's been called the rougarou. It's been called the cynocephalus. Their names down through the centuries. of creatures that could be considered a dogman. A dogman is a more modern term for what we believe to be a very old creature. Going back to ancient Egypt, when you had Anubis and Wepwawet, which were both dog head. Well, Anubis had a jackal head, and Wepwawet had a wolf head. You've got the Greeks and the Romans that both stated in their military journals that they encountered and battled dog-headed creatures in both India, in the mountains of India, and in northern Africa, what they referred to as the cynocephalus, which gives us the term cynocephali. You've got from Christian, Catholic iconography, Saint Patrick. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
No, Saint
Not
Patrick.
Saint Patrick. Saint Patrick was a totally different guy. Yeah. So it was Saint Michael. Was it Saint Michael? The dog-headed saint.
Think so. Saint Christopher.
Saint Christopher, the dog-headed saint. And for some reason, I was just drawing a complete blank. I don't know why I said Saint Patrick. Probably because we're getting close to Saint Patrick's Day.
He said Saint Patrick. He said Saint Michael. Then he said George Michael. You know,
yeah, George Michael. It could have been. You got to have faith. But he was depicted as having the head of a dog until he converted to Catholicism and performed his first miracle. When he became a saint, he was supposedly cured by God, and therefore from there on after had the head of a man. But in early Catholic renditions, he appears with the head of a dog. Christopher Columbus and Marco Polo both documented running into what they referred to as the cynocephali, or dog-headed men on islands during their travels. Of course, you've got, and this one could be taken one of two ways. I'm talking about the Ulfhednar from Norse mythology. They were berserkers, but it was also said that they possessed the strength and speed of a wolf, and no blade could harm them. So I think there's a little more to it than just some guy throwing a wolf skin over his head and going crazy in battle. I think there was a little more to it. Now I'm not saying I'm not saying that they were dogmen, but I'm not saying it couldn't have been either. I mean, we weren't there. A large chunk of that history was destroyed when the Scandinavian countries were forcibly converted to Christianity.
And I mean, you've got stories of these things popping up all over history. I mean, like, there's a bit of a big distinction between werewolves and dogmen specifically, but there's also going to be a lot of run over. You're going to have a lot of cases where what was reported might have been a dogman instead of a werewolf, or what was reported as a dogman may have been a werewolf instead of a dogman, because a werewolf is one that transforms with the moon or just transforms into that dog or into that wolf form, right? Versus a dogman, which is just perpetually in that form. So in cases like Cuchulainn, in cases like the Beast of Gévaudan, like I was talking about earlier, we have these creatures that were reported as wolf-like, which could have been either a werewolf or a dogman. And I mean, specifically in the time that was going on, there was a lot of craze about these magical creatures, the werewolf, the vampire, banshees, stuff like that, right? So around that time, they wouldn't have exactly adapted the phrase dogman. So that's where I'm saying a lot of those cases where they reported a werewolf may have been a case of a dogman instead. So you have to look at some of these cases through history as, could it potentially be something different? Could this have been reported incorrectly? And that's where I was coming from with the Beast of Gévaudan, Cuchulainn. I mean, hell, there are plenty of Celtic, like specifically Irish stories about good and bad wolf men.
Yeah,
and
Cullen is a great example. That's one I hadn't even thought of bringing up before.
Yeah, and it's one that is always on my mind whenever we talk about dogmen and werewolves, because I love that story.
Eric Testerman brought up a good point. Says berserkers took the form and powers of the wolf and bear. Yeah, but it's we've never really known whether that was something that they just like maybe drink a potion made from fermented mushrooms to make them go berserk, or were they legit lycanthropes? Were they imbued with this ability to change? We don't know. It's an interesting twist on the history, though. If you think it might have been allies, might have been dogmen that fought by their side, it would be an interesting twist on the legend. Um,
Which I think it would make for a really interesting book as well. Hint, hint, nudge,
might
nudge.
might very well. 443 Big Bit caught my drink. Drinking my green tea with ginseng. I love that stuff.
I've got me some blue
Um,
Gatorade.
Little Thiolism says, or just a misidentified Bigfoot. I think there's a lot of cross misidentification. A lot of Bigfoot stories before people ever heard of what a Gugway was, or for a long time they've known what a werewolf was. I mean, for more than a few generations back, we've heard the term werewolf. But you'd get stories from people that would say it was a Bigfoot sighting, but then they'd start describing a snout and ears. You're like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like a Bigfoot. Or quite the contrary. We thought it was a dog man, but then it was walking like a person. It didn't have the digitigrade feet. It had like regular large feet, but its face looked more like a baboon and not like a dog. I'm like, wait a minute, that's probably a Gugway. So I think there are some cross misidentifications, but I think some of that is starting to clear up as we talk more and more about it, not just here on this show, but on other shows like this, where we talk about, for example, we got Monster Radio right there, Ryan Paul Tremblay, one of the best authorities I know when I go to on anything on Gugways or the Chinosqua. He's done a lot about it. And there are people now that I have talked to because of stuff like that, what he's put out, have said, I used to think what I saw was a werewolf, but now I think it was this Gugway thing. So there's a lot of these things out there, and there are some cross identification, but I think as we start looking for like we were saying at the beginning, looking for the phases of the moon and other commonalities, it's going to allow us to start predicting behavior. And to be honest, I think we probably have enough reports to do that, to start predicting behavior. But the problem is none of these reports are really gathered in one spot. They're scattered all over the internet, popping up on different shows. I would like to sit down and get a few people involved and start cataloging these and start literally putting them into one database where we can say, okay, all of this happened at this phase of the moon. All of these happened under these conditions. All of these happened at the same time of year every year. And when we start doing that, I think we're going to start being able to predict behavior. And I do definitely believe there's enough stories out there where we could start doing it.
So I had something that I wanted to bring up the potentiality of. So when talking about the Ulfhednar, talking about these berserkers that were able to take on the aspects of certain creatures, be it bears, be it wolves, etc. Is it possible that those may not have been Dogman type creatures, or Dogman blood or something like that? Is it possible that those could have been a Norse skinwalker, so to speak?
Maybe. I mean,
Could it,
I certainly wouldn't rule it out.
because I mean, like we're talking about men that they saw as equals. We're talking about people they saw as their berserkers. They saw them as their warriors,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, to an extent, I would say that if you are assuming any sort of combat position as a Viking or a Norseman, or as a Dane, whatever, right? I to a certain extent, I would say that they would consider anyone who was taking up arms a warrior, be it if they were, channeling the spirit of a dog or something like that to maul somebody to death, So I wonder if it may have been either a Norse equivalent of a skinwalker, or, I mean, it's been proven on a number of different ruins and relics here in the States that the Vikings were here before anyone else, like before any other Europeans, I guess I should specify. So I mean, could it have been something they learned?
The Heavener runestone carbon dated, I think it was in the late 890s. So what, 600 years before Columbus sailed?
Yeah, it's, I mean, a long time before
And
Vespucci was even here.
That's in Oklahoma.
Yeah,
that's like 6 hours from where we're at right now.
I really
want to go down there and visit that.
Because I mean, like, obviously, there's going to be like a lot of discrepancies between the two, but I mean, like, that's why I said a sort of you know, because it would be something similar, but not necessarily exact, particularly because if it was someone who was learning how to do that magic from the outside, being an
Mhm.
outsider, it wouldn't be perfect, or it wouldn't be the exact same way. They would have their own spin on it. They would, you know, there's a lot of different variables that would cause certain distinctions, you know?
Mhm.
So I wonder if the Ulfhednar may have been a skinwalker type, not necessarily.
Or it simply could have been a matter of them drinking something made of fermented, of the wacky mushrooms, and going into a trance. I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, I don't know. None of us know.
When in
Uh,
doubt, drugs.
well, they said that no spear or no arrow seemed to slow them down. So, obviously they weren't feeling any pain. But, could have just easily been something they mixed up and turned them into a
I want,
lycanthrope.
I want, I wonder if the Vikings may have made it to modern day Colombia. Ain't nothing slowing them down.
Here, chew these leaves. You're going to be fine. 443 Big Vic says peyote question mark. I don't think it was peyote. Peyote is kind of an arid plant, and it grows mostly in like the Southwest. We're kind of where you would find cactuses and arid plants. So I don't think it's common to the Norse regions. I could be wrong. I
not
could
to
be wrong about
not
that,
to
but I
mention
think
that
it is.
peyote only grows in the Americas, and I think specifically in North America and Central America.
Yeah, I'm
Which
not 100% certain on that, but I think that sounds right.
but I mean, even so, like if it was in the Americas, think about transporting something like that across the ocean. I mean, like its shelf life is not very long. They would not be able to. They would
Well, I
not
would
be
say
able to keep
even
it.
even dried. If you got the plant, dried it out, and then steeped it in a tea, I would say it would still have the same effect. But Mike over at Abnormal Investigation says kind of like what Leroy Hart was. That's entirely possible. Maybe it's a case of something that he thought he was because he entered this trance. But there's so much weird surrounding the Leroy Hart thing. Like going behind a tree and an animal coming out, coming out and taking off. There's just so much weird about that. I think there's more to it than just him taking a drug and becoming convinced that's what he was. Especially considering the way he escaped from jail, and they still won't release how he did it. Yeah, there's something bizarre there, and I think he was more on the skinwalker side than just merely taking a drug to convince him he was this Ulf Hednar warrior. So in his case, I would definitely lean more towards skinwalkers. Chairman Meow says skinwalkers have the whole magical element though. Dogmen are just you get what you see. Uh, yeah, and I've often wondered, and for a while I was kind of the opinion that werewolves were simply like a primitive attempt to explain dogmen, because dogmen were showing up in an area. They would say, "Oh, this person in the light of a full moon turned into this creature," because it was easier to accept than these things just being out there. Kind of like how the Norse used to think that uh, the aurora borealis was the starlight in the light of the Bifrost glinting off the armor of the Valkyries. Of course, we know that's not a fact today, but at the time, it was a way for somebody who didn't understand it to explain a phenomenon they didn't have any understanding of. Uh,
Rationalizing.
right, exactly, rationalizing, and that's what I used to think that werewolves were, or werewolves weren't attempt to rationalize dogmen. But I'm kind of on the fence about that these days anymore,
I think
especially
they're two
when,
separate types of creatures.
yeah,
Genuinely, I think.
I'm
I,
starting to believe that.
I think in some cases there are, because okay, so you got to trace back the origins of werewolves and trace back the origin of Dogman. So Dogman is said to, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Dogman is said to be a creature born like that, correct?
Right, they're that way all the time.
It's born like that. That's its existence, right? Werewolves, the original stories, I mean, they differ, but most of them maintain the same course. It's a man who is cursed, much in the same way as Wendigos, cursed with hunger, you know. But the early sayings in at least Celtic culture and Germanic cultures, a lot of them said, they grew so hungry that the flesh of animals was no longer satisfying. And so they were always going and going and going for that next great kill, that next great meal. And so it's the original stories always tell of a man who just grew so hungry, right? And that's something that I've read countless times through the years. But there's also stories of men who were cursed by witches, men who were cursed by the gods, men who made deals with the devil, made deals with demons, made deals with anything really. And it's like, so the distinction between dogmen and werewolves, to me, there's such a distinct difference that I think it would be wrong to say that one could exist and not the other at the point we're at.
Chairman Meow says, unless you go with the angle that dogmen are created by the government, i.e., bred to be what they are, I don't think that's the case. I think dogmen have been around far longer. I think they, like, for example, how the Romans and the Greeks both claim to have battled them. Now, our government is certainly not above experimenting on something. If dogmen has been around for a long time and they were able to capture some, you can bet they're going to try to weaponize it.
Yeah, and you've got sightings of these things that predate the United States, that predate most of modern civilization. So I mean, to say that they're being created by the government, you would also have to say that the government was creating some sort of time travel device to send them back in time to alter the course of history, which would be absolutely absurd
or terrifying, or both.
I mean, it would be terrifying if that was the case, but then you run into the issue of creating paradoxes, because you send something back in time to take care of a problem. When that problem no longer exists, you no longer have that problem. Therefore, you no longer have to go back in time and solve said problem. So you've created a paradox, which who knows what that would do.
1980 CNH says, what about your dog soldiers DNA? DNA. I can't really take credit for the dog soldiers. During the time of westward expansion, and this would have started in the 1820s, all the way up to modern societies, on the Cheyenne, primarily the Cheyenne peoples, there came about what they called the dog soldiers, or the Hotametaneo. They were fierce. They were incredible warriors of their day. They became a society unto themselves. And there were multiple war bands of the dog soldiers beneath the band of the dog soldiers. There was some called the Crazy Dogs, and off the top of my head, I can't remember the others, but there were like 7 different bands. And because of the success of these, the Cheyenne were very close allies of the Sioux and several other tribes, including the Crow and some of the other prairie tribes. They banded together. A lot of these especially the Sioux, wound up becoming part of the dog soldiers, and to the point of forming their own bands of dog soldiers. The reason I chose to pattern mine mostly off the Lakota is because after the Battle of Wounded Knee, a lot of those societies went underground. The U.S. cavalry tried to ride them to extinction, and they believed they believed they'd done it. But there are modern groups on reservations that call themselves dog soldiers even today, and I've long believed those societies didn't disappear entirely. I think they went underground, and it was said that some of the most powerful of them could change form. And that was what I based my apex predator, Hotametaneo, on. That's what I based my dog soldiers on. I built on the legend of the last surviving dog soldiers that were Lakota. So, there's, if you look at the actual legends of the dog soldiers, there are lots of tribes that were involved. They were primarily Cheyenne, but there were Lakota bands. And if you notice in my books, they're not just Lakota. Some of the main characters are, but they're not all Lakota.
I had something there for a second, and so talking about these dog soldiers, right? So in theory, right, could one of them have stayed in the we'll say wild shape, putting it in D&D terms? Could one of them have stayed in the wild shape form long enough to forget that he was a human?
Well, I kind of the way I looked at it and the way I read about it and when I did the research for my Apex Predator series, what I did was I looked at it as long as they were pure in heart, as long as they were warriors for their people, as long as they were good, they were able to control that shape. But if they ever crossed that line, they lost the ability to go back to human. And that to me was the origin of what the Cherokee called the Ulonga Doglala, or the spirits with knife teeth. So that was kind of the differentiation at first, but then they started encountering werewolves and they encountered actual dogmen that were never Ulonga Doglala. So the universe of the Apex Predator series has kind of broadened, and it's going to continue to broaden. But I think, me personally anyway, I think if they truly were able to change, I think at some point, if they went too far, they would lose their humanity and not be able to change back.
Yeah, I mean that could explain the origins of Dogman, like even further than as we know it, as they're just born like that. I mean, obviously it's just a theory. Like, you don't like we're not saying anything as like fact or anything here, chat. But like, it could give a at least marginal explanation as to how these creatures came to be originally, instead of just writing it off as a curse, or writing it off as just an abomination, science, whatever. It could be, you know one of them went a little overboard and just became that, and then more of them started following suit, and because they can't change back, their children are cursed with the same thing.
It very well could be. William Nighthawk just sent me a picture, and I wanted to share this with everybody. This is a dog soldier, and that's an actual picture taken way back in the day of a dog soldier, and they were considered some of the most feared warriors of their day. That's why the cavalry tried to hunt them to extinction, and I don't think they were ever able to.
And that does bring up the possibility of, if them being cursed to maintain that form for the rest of their lives, or however long, and they pass that on to their children, that brings into the question: can the children redeem themselves and come back to their human-like form?
I would think so. I would think, at a certain point, it becomes a choice. Um, but it would all determine on whether it would all depend on how much the curse had a hold of them. Louis Noriega says, "What about the Egyptian dogman Anubis? He was supposed to be godlike." Yeah, Anubis and his brother Wepwelwet were both dog-headed. Well, Anubis was jackal-headed, and Wepwelwet had the head of a wolf. But they were both considered gods of the underworld. Eric Testament says the one brother was pure and could change. The other brother abused the gift and remained in wolf form.
Yeah, and I don't know if it would necessarily be a possibility for the original one being cursed to atone, but I feel like there might be some exploration to be had for the children. You know what I mean?
Yeah. William Nighthawk says we can change back and forth when we needed to or wanted to. And that's the approach that's what I approached with my book. William, I sent you a link. I would love for you to jump in on this discussion. There's only so much that Noah and I can bring to this. you were the authority on this, my brother. I would love to have you come in. So if you feel up to it, brother, I would love for you to jump in. I already sent you the link.
Yeah, dude, I'm just some kid. I'm just some guy who has sat here and looked up stuff. I don't know too deep into the real nitty gritty of the mythology or the spiritualism of it, because man, my expertise is, or at least in this respect, my expertise is more on like ghosts, not on monsters. I'm very well versed in ghosts and such, but not monsters.
With the Wind says moon phase is highly important. I found that nights with half or less moon is much more active. Yeah, I definitely think that. I think these creatures know which phases of the moon they have the best advantage at. During nights of the full moon, I've been outside and could almost read a book by nights of the full moon. It all depends on how well your vision adjusts to the dark. But on nights of the full moon, you know, I've camped without a fire on nights of the full moon. If you let your vision acclimate, you can see very well on the light of a full moon. But our vision is just not set up for a waxing or a waning moon
Or new moon.
or a new moon.
Pitch black skies out in the woods. It is like 5% visibility.
Yeah. With the wind says darker the night, or even better, more dark, foggy, stormy, snowy, misty the night, the more active as far as scripted movement. But I tell you, you get a fresh fallen snow on the ground. You've got a good blanket of snow, and you got a full moon. It might as well be daylight. You're going to see anything moving out there.
Yeah, I don't make a habit of going out in the woods at night. After all the stories that I've been told by this guy, and after all the stories I've read and in mythology that I've read into and all that, and ghost stories, stuff like that, man, like the woods at night are not somewhere I like to be. I mean, hell, I barely like leaving the house at night. I've seen some weird shit in town.
Richard Harris has got a good point. So if you sit in the dark long enough, it's amazing how much better your eyes get. Yeah, and I've done that setting in deer stands. Just sit there with no light on and let my eyes acclimate. Yeah, the detail you start being able to see is pretty intense. Louis Noriega says, I've been out in the desert with a full moon. I can see my shadow, and a lot of stuff is active out in the full moon. William Nighthawk says, I'm getting ready to do a ceremony tonight, leaving to go out the door now. Sorry, brother. But yeah, let's do a show here in the near future on the dog soldiers. I think that would be a fantastic tie-in, William. I'll shoot me a message when you've got some spare time, and we'll plan to do that exact thing. With the Wind says Upper Missouri Valley example is quiet overall in winter, but on nights of snow, fog, and wind, the activity increases massively.
Yeah, and I don't know, man. Like I've always been told, don't whistle at night, and if you hear someone screaming in the woods at night, don't go in after them. And that's not necessarily just been from this guy over here. That's been like drilled into my head by friends who come from all sorts of different cultures. There's so many different cultures on this planet that have the same story of, hey, if you hear someone screaming for help in the woods at like 3 a.m., that's probably a trap, man.
More than likely, or God forbid, if you're ever out in the woods and you hear something call your name.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, that's a whole look at the time moment.
Or you hear something ask your name. It's like, no, that's okay. No, I'm not giving that to you.
No kidding. There we go. Toshi the Wolf says, oh yeah, my mom's friend rented some cabins at the local state park here. I spent the night there and went out to enjoy the moon, and I was surprised by how bright it was. I saw a deer walking by. Yeah, if you spend enough time like just not in the light, just not with your face in a cell phone, not with not with a flashlight, not with a campfire. If you just sit somewhere outside in the dark, you will be astounded how good your vision gets.
The reason why y'all couldn't see William's chats in the YouTube chat is because he was chatting through Facebook. Because we're live on both YouTube and Facebook.
Miss Lene says, when I was in my 20s, part of the training I did with my horses was to ride in the woods on a full moon. We called it riding moon. Called it a riding moon. Yeah, you can see a lot on the night of a full moon. Uh, Ryan, if you want to jump in on this conversation, shoot me a message and I'll send you a link. You are welcome to jump in, brother. Sorry, I was trying to see if I had
Whistling
missed.
at night attracts spirits. It's actually derived from a Japanese belief, and you know I've
A
heard
lot of
it from.
Native Americans say the same thing.
I was about to say I've heard it from a lot of my native friends. I've heard it from Vietnamese friends. I had a buddy in high school who was a German exchange student, and we all went hanging out one time after school, and it was dark, and he was like, "Man, I don't want to be anywhere near the woods." And everybody was like, "Why are you chicken?" And I was like, "Why do you not want to be near the woods?" And he was like, "Man, I've just always been told, growing up, don't go out in the woods at night, especially if, you hear something calling for you or something calling for anything. Don't go out in the woods at night. Don't whistle at night." Like he was telling me that stuff. And I'm like, bro, like I've heard that same shit growing up. Like, okay. I'm like, sure thing, Bubba. If you want to stay out of the woods while they all go in there, I'll stay with you. Because you seem to be the only sensible one around.
Sorry, it never fails. No sooner than we go live, my messenger will blow up. I was
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to see if any of them were show related. One thing I wanted to bring up, and these are cases that we can find the phase of the moon because they made national news. One case in particular I wanted to bring up was the case of the Amazon driver who was attacked here in Missouri. This would have been September of last year. Um, Police on the scene said they'd never seen an attack so bad. The county coroner said he'd never seen a body torn up that bad. The dogs that were in the home, the deputies in the area that responded, had to enter the home to get to the dogs, and then killed the dogs. But no necropsy has ever been released, and that's the truly weird part. Is it because if they'd found tissue, they would have certainly touted that as hey, it was the dogs, it was the dogs. We've got the proof. They would have thrown that out there and been all that would have been all over the news. But they have been suspiciously quiet. And I can tell you, it does not take 6 months to get the results of a necropsy back. If those dogs had been involved, we'd have known it already. They would have admitted it. But they want to blame the dogs, but they've got nothing saying that the dogs were actually involved.
And
Same way with the cases of the two people that were killed in Crook County, Tennessee. The woman who was attacked, over 40% of her tissue was missing, and she lived for a short time. I think it was a couple of days in the intensive care unit. Uh, there's just so much weird about these supposed dog attacks, and then they leave after they say it. Well, okay, we know it was the dogs. We had the dogs put down. Then they leave the case open. That's the big teller. When they leave these cases open, they are not subject to Freedom of Information Act subpoenas. You cannot get copies of the records. I've in the two cases at Cook County, Tennessee, I've seen the autopsy reports, and in my law enforcement career, I've seen a lot of autopsy reports. That was the most edited, highly redacted set of autopsy reports I'd ever seen.
and
There was
you
so much information that wasn't there that should have been.
there's one turn of phrase that comes to mind. The silence is deafening. Because in a case of a situation like this, where they're intentionally trying to keep it quiet, that is so much louder than if they're like, oh yeah, it was the dogs. These dogs right here. Yeah, it was them. So case closed. Versus, oh yeah, it was a bad dog attack. That's it. Don't question that. We're gonna leave the case open so nobody can go snooping. But yeah, it was dogs, sure. And it's like, okay, that's suspicious. Thank you.
Eric Testament says, "What's your opinion that some dogman feed off your fear?" I don't know if they're actually feeding off the fear per se, or trying to scare the adrenochrome into your body. There's been so much pointed out about once adrenochrome gets into your system, that seems to be when predators like it the most. Uh, I think fear does something to the bloodstream. I think fear does something to your muscle tissue. I don't think they're actually, like absorbing your fear or anything like that. But I think they do encourage that fear because, to me, again, talking about the cases when we're dealing with adrenochrome, I think that they're trying to get the fear into your system for a reason.
And I mean, you also got to take into account that, Jesus, if I could get that out of my mouth, dogs. There we go. Dogs can smell your fear. Wolves can smell your fear, right? So if we're talking about a massive dog, just we'll just leave it as a huge dog for this hypothetical, right? If we're talking about a massive dog, it can still smell your fear. And if you're wanting to target something, you want to target the one that's afraid of you, because the ones that aren't afraid of you are going to fight back. You don't want to go after a meal that's going to make it tough,
Yeah. Judy Davis has got a good point. She says a dog will attack a person who's afraid of them before attacking one who's not.
Exactly. We're same wavelength here. Judy, me and you, we're But yeah, it's like dogs, wolves, all of them can smell fear. Like it's what is it? An endorphin that's produced? Is that what it's called? I'm not a doctor. I have no idea.
No, an endorphin would be a chemical released in your brain. I think what you're looking for is pheromone.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, there's some sort of chemical that they can smell whenever you're afraid of them. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I don't know this stuff. All I know is dogs smell fear, and when they get angry, it scares me.
Well, I know most animals will react to you differently if you're afraid. Louis Noriega says, "What do? Turn your blood into A1 steak sauce so you can just taste better because of your fear?" I think it's something to do with the adrenochrome that gets released into your bloodstream. I'm not an expert on that. There's a couple of guys I know that know a lot more about adrenochrome than I do. Tombstone says they can literally smell the fear on you. I think that's the adrenochrome that dumps into your system. I think it does something to you physically, and I think that's why they try to get that released into your blood. That's something I'm going to be digging into more. Probably going to do a show just on that. Bizzle A says, "I'm about 3/4 the way through the new Wild Hunt book, and it's absolutely insane. I'm loving it." That's awesome, man. Thank you. Gravity Cheeseburger says, "I don't know how to spell the name of the tribe. It's pronounced Paiute." Oh, the Paiute from Ohio Valley region. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's Piaute. I'll put that. I believe that's
Piaute is what I've got.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. It's pronounced Paiute. It's Piaute. Just look up Paiute and the word powwow, and they have them all across the country, and a lot of them are multi-tribal. Like the ones here, if you went to a powwow here in Southwest Missouri, you would probably have Osage, and you would have Cherokee, and Chippewa and Modoc and just about every tribe that exists within 500 miles of here will all come to the powwows. But that's where I would start. If you've got ancestry that are Paiute, I would look back through your family tree and find that where that is, and then maybe you can proceed from there by talking to somebody that's from the Paiute Nation. Camo Dad 72 says finished the Lakeview Man series and just started Operation Wild Hunt, Operation Lily. I hope you like it, man. Thank you for reading those.
Sorry, I'm sending messages.
Oh, no problem. Sorry, I was trying to look and see if I'd missed any questions. Uh,
Yeah, man. I definitely to get us back on topic here. I definitely think that that the moon phases can impact the behaviors of these creatures, and I think whether or not there's some sort of attachment to fear, right? Whether or not there's some sort of extra flavor from the fear or this or that. I think there's definitely a pattern to be seen there, but I think as far as the patterns we've discussed thus far, I would say that the moon phases is a lot more visible. You know what I mean? I'd say it's a lot easier to track the moon phases and see, if there's a change in attack frequency or hunting patterns, behaviors, based off of moon phases versus being able to prove anything with the fear. But that's not to say that they don't just that it's not just like they want you to fear them, but it also could be they like the taste or they like the smell or there's something about the chemical that helps them heal or something like that.
I think it's the adrenochrome. Doyle Thorne says there's most certainly a difference in taste between deer that run for a while and the ones that drop quickly. I prefer the taste of the ones that drop quickly. I keep referring back to that, but I think that's a great example of it. Every deer that I've had to chase, we always brined them to get the gamey flavor out of them, but the ones that dropped quickly didn't have as much of the gamey flavor. And I don't know if that's what you would call the adrenochrome, but I keep referring back to that because that is what has been told to me on a number of occasions, that certain creatures who prey on human want in the blood, like Dogman or a Gugway, that adrenochrome fuels the blood somehow and makes the meat different. Um, Griff says he likes reading the books in the storyline order, moving between the series. I think you get a bigger picture that way.
I I need to read the books. I y'all I've got a bit of a confession to make to y'all. Um Back when the Ragnarok books were 5 books instead of 10, I made it a little over halfway through book 3. Um that's not to say that I didn't like it. I just stopped reading. uh but yeah, since then there's significantly more books that have been released that I need to catch up on. Um and by the current count, by how the books are split up now, I have read, what is that? 5 books out of
if you read if you stopped in the third one, yeah, you would
halfway
have
through
been
book
in
3,
okay about halfway through book 3. That
little
would put
over.
you would have read about the first 5 of the series, so you about halfway through.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm 5 books in and you have how many books in print now?
28,
Yeah, and yeah,
about to be 29.
some of y'all have me beat by a long shot.
Kevin Bode says, I won't deer hunt the morning after a full moon simply because they run at night and sleep during the day. Good point. Growing Old with Purpose says, I've read most of your books, DA, and will keep reading, just not into zombies, though. The thing is I've had a lot of people say that they weren't into zombies and still liked my zombie series. But if you want to check it out sometime, I'll be happy to maybe help you along on that. But I think if you give the first one a shot, I think you might be interested. Because it's not so much about the zombies as it is about the characters.
And they pick up to be terrifying. My son won't listen to me at all. Mostly because he's not real. I don't have one.
We got a Robbie sighting. Holy crap. Where's the hat, Rip?
Oh, sorry.
He's a little framey. He's like
you're a little laggy there, buddy.
Sorry.
Richie Harris says The Walking Dead ruined the whole zombie thing for me, dog. The Walking Dead is not zombies. All right. The Walking Dead,
a soap opera.
The Walking Dead is a soap opera featuring zombies. They are existent in The Walking Dead, but it has nothing to do with the whole grand scheme. It's like,
so how'd the soccer game go, Rob?
Well, we were doing good the first half, and then we got that goofy little young ref on our side for the next half, and it ended up being 10-1. So, first year ref can't do nothing with it. There's about 4 or 5 bad calls he made that just didn't help us at all. So, what are you gonna do?
Well, Robbie, I can take over and make far worse calls if you'd like. Because I don't know.
As long as you make them towards the other team, I don't care. Make them towards the other team, I don't care. But I mean, he wasn't making calls sitting there going. And he was probably 5 years younger than you are, Noah.
What, 18?
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, Mike, have a good night. Thanks for hanging out with us, bud.
Make sure to get Mike's little shout out in the chat again.
Oh, definitely put that up there.
I'm trying to figure out how to get the bot to do just like a shout out command where you can just do like !SO and then like the channel name. But with YouTube, it's a lot harder to do that.
Thank you very much, Pat. I appreciate it.
Hope
you, Pat. Hope you're feeling better too. Oh, sorry. Well, we got a Miss Naoma sighting too. Oh my gosh.
Naoma, good to see you.
Hey, how's it going?
Slow.
Hey, Naoma.
Hey.
How you doing?
Oh. Let's kill some things here. Wait.
Alrighty then.
Just reaches for my revolver, just like, okay. Point me in the target direction. I got you.
Oh, Hector. I had a hard time getting in here tonight, guys.
So I want to bring something up on at least a bit of topic.
What's that?
So there's been a lot of cases, particularly recently, like in the last decade, that have been cases of animal attacks.
Mm-hmm.
But they're often suspicious, or a lot of the details have been.
It's been happening a lot recently too.
Mm-hmm. And
yep.
I mean, like it's something that I've noticed just by, simple as Googling animal attack death. You can find a lot that it's like, this police department didn't release information on this event because of this reason. And it's like, okay, well, now that it's been solved and we figured out what caused it and the bear is dead, why are we leaving the case open? Why are we leaving information in the dark? Like, but like there's been a lot of cases that I've even noticed where it's like animal attacks in areas where those animals don't really thrive, for lack of a better way of putting it. So it's like, oh yeah, this guy got attacked by a bear, and it's like the middle of like, I don't know, Kansas City, and it's like,
yeah. Toshi says he's got to go. Got an emergency call from his mom saying she fell. Toshi, I hope she's okay. We'll certainly be saying a prayer for you, for her safety. So I understand you got to take off. Hope you have a good night, and I hope she's all right.
it's like we have these cases where it's like in cities where bear attacks happen, and it's like, why is there a bear attack in the city? On one hand, if it was a bear attack, how did the bear get there in the first place? But on the other hand, why are we being so cloak and dagger about just a bear attack?
Exactly. Why? What are they hiding? But there have been people here in Springfield, Noah, that have caught bears on their Ring doorbell cameras.
Around here, it's black bears though. Like if we got a case
black
of
bear will still maul the crap out of you.
Well, yeah,
if
but
you piss it off.
If we had a case of someone getting mauled by a black bear and they were really shady about the details, that's gonna raise a lot of eyebrows, because I mean, black bears are usually pretty timid. Usually, if you get between them and their cubs, then they're a lot less timid. But it's gonna raise a lot of eyebrows around here for black bears. But if it was like a grizzly bear or a brown bear, like, yeah, I can see how that might happen. But on the same end, like, not every city is Springfield, because Springfield's a busy city, and it's got terrible infrastructure versus Kansas City, which has pretty good infrastructure, and it's a busy city, and it's constantly busy. Not a lot of bears reported in Kansas City.
Louis Noriega says it's like right now, Huntington Beach is close to the ocean, is saying there are a lot of coyote attacks, and it's not hilly.
Coyote attacks?
It's weird you'd be getting coyote attacks in town.
It's kind of weird you're getting coyote attacks.
Well, I went out last night to the shop, and I heard the biggest pack of coyotes I've ever heard. Right? You usually hear one or two, but this had to be 20 or 30. Just down, out in the field, just yipping, and I've never heard that many. It was a lot.
Maybe you should spend some time out there with Mr. 458 and thin that herd a bit. Do a little yoke dropping.
They come within distance. That's what's going to happen.
This isn't actually an animal attack per se, but have you guys heard about the guy who disappeared in Happy Valley, by the Great Smoky Mountains? He had some land out there. I guess he used it basically for recreation. He called his sons that morning and said he was going to go out and do some mowing. His neighbors, as he was driving down the road, saw him drive down the road with this truck and the trailer with the mower on it, and he pulled in. Another neighbor saw him mowing a little bit later. And then when he got done, he got on the ATV and he was headed out in the woods, and he didn't come home that night. And he didn't come home the next day. And they went out there and they found his ATV sitting in the woods. No footprints, no indication of it. It was like, I think it had basically just run out of gas. It was like he was lifted up off of that thing and gone. There was no indication whatsoever of anything having come through the brush at him. No blood, nothing. He just vanished.
Tell people, if you're going in the woods, look up. Because there are ambush predators that will prey from above.
And that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like something reached down and pulled him up off that ATV.
Wow.
And to this day, it's an open case. They've never solved it.
Well, Robbie, what was that case you were telling me about the Marines that encountered? Robbie,
About 1977, I think, somewhere around there. There was a lot of Dogman sightings from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and there's actually been a lot of Dogman sightings in North Carolina, period. But there was about 4 or 5, like right within, either weeks or months of each other, right around Camp Lejeune, and it was all Marines that were making the reports.
well, there have been a lot of Bigfoot sightings on Fort Leonard Wood.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean that to the defense of Fort Leonard Wood, it tends to happen when you're built in the middle of the woods and you're in the ass crack of nowhere.
It's 25,000 acres. That's like 90% timber.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a reason why people call it Lost in the Woods, because like there ain't shit there.
Especially you get toward the back gate of Leonard Wood, which is where in the Wild Hunt books, I set their headquarters is near the back gate of Leonard Wood. There is nothing out there.
Yeah, it's just
Fort Lost in the Woods.
just forest.
1980 CNH says there are Bigfoot on both Fort Knox and Fort Campbell. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, a lot of these bases have massive sections of land, and even a large fence isn't going to stop something like that.
Oh yeah.
No.
Doesn't matter if that fence is
Especially
electrified, neither. You're just gonna piss the thing
Well,
off.
especially if we believe some of the things we've heard about them being able to jump, and
Or just
like,
shimmy a tree and go over.
Yeah, or that too. But yeah, I want to look more into those Camp Lejeune, and I thought maybe when you had Nick or was telling about Nick being up there in North Carolina, I thought maybe that was going to be some of the stuff he was. I don't know, where was he? Was he anywhere around Lejeune?
I don't remember where he said exactly they were at, but it turned out to be a really big black bear.
That'd be. I
Eric,
think that would be something good to look into.
I agree. Eric Chesterman says at Fort Riley, Kansas, fishing the ponds off the tank trails. I learned quickly not to fish at night. There's strange things there. Wonder what's there.
That's
what they say?
interesting.
Things go bump in the night.
No,
Absolutely.
they go thump growl bump in the night.
Thump growl bump.
I wonder. This is pure spitballing, right? I wonder if we might be seeing more activity from these creatures near military bases because they're such a threat to these creatures. Because you see guys going around with guns, wearing armor. They have big vehicles that are just tearing the trees apart just in an instant. Like, that would spark my curiosity too. If somebody rolled up with a massive machine and just started tearing my home apart, I'd be like, hey, what's up with that?
That's a valid point.
Definitely. Hang on, I'm looking for a picture.
And you said Leonard Wood is how many acres?
25,000, I believe it is.
So yeah, I mean, like, picture you're some dude just chilling in your countless acres of woods, right? Just having a blast. And then one day some chaps just decide they're going to roll up with their heavy machinery and just take a big chunk out of the center of it for you. I'd be pretty pissed.
Leonard Wood is a big area, don't get me wrong. That is a massive area for wooded terrain, but it butts right up against the Mark Twain National Forest, and the Mark Twain is 2.5 million acres of unbroken forest land.
Hey, I mean, Doesn't matter if I'm living in a cardboard box or if I'm living in a 20,000 square foot mansion. If somebody shows up with a sledgehammer and starts beating the walls in, I'm going to be a little upset.
Fair.
Has there been any indication of other wildlife that would do that though? I mean,
What,
bears?
Territorial?
Well, I mean, I realize they'd be territorial, but I mean, you've got bears, you've got big cats, you've got a lot of predators out there. Are they smart enough to zero in on the danger people, or is that something that would be you're thinking that would be strictly a
For the most
Dogman?
part, like logging operations and stuff, the animals tend to clear out of the area. Although I did read one case where a very, very pissed off grizzly charged a group of timber cruisers, and they had to basically vacate the area because this massive angry grizzly was coming after them.
I mean, makes sense. I'd leave too.
Yeah, wouldn't take me 2 seconds to get out of there.
I reckon there's a lot of animals that would be pretty territorial about that sort of thing. But my thing is, we're talking
More intelligent being,
large enough creature to be noticeable on that scale of land. You know what I mean? We're talking something that will trip up the proximity alarms. You know, like, oh, something's getting close, and it's man-ish sized. And then it's like, okay, let's go over here. Let's go figure out, what is that?
Yeah, I can see your point.
I mean, like, with military bases, you see a bear and it's like, oh, okay, hello, bear. And, they chase it off and make sure it, goes and enjoys its berries or fish or whatever the hell it's eating that day. But you see a 10-foot tall bipedal ape start walking towards you, or a 10-foot tall bipedal dog start walking towards you, and suddenly your bear dispersal protocol goes out the window because you're just like, what do I do?
Well, yeah, there's one word in that sentence that kind of throws your whole world off: bipedal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second you say bipedal in front of the word dog, things change drastically in your
there's
reality.
a whole different angle of approach.
You round a corner and you see a bear standing on its hind legs reaching for berries off of a tree branch, and it's still going to freak you out because you're like, whoa, they're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Miss Lene says, sounds like our farm, we're backed up against miles and miles of the Shawnee National Forest. Camwood 72 says, Fort Bragg was about 142,000 acres or so. Lots of space to hide stuff, but never heard of any Bigfoot or Dogman. With the Wind says, Elgin Air Force Base is 464,000 acres. Bases, National State Forest, WMAs. What's a WMA? What is, I know what that's supposed to be, and it's just drawing a complete blank. Wildlife management areas. Okay. Have the protected greenway tracts that Sasquatch, Dogman, Gugway, etc. need to live, surrounded by human urban growth and development.
I am blind as a bat tonight.
Gary Lee says, you hear all those stories about spec ops hunting these things. Maybe they want to seek revenge, men in green bad. Not a bad theory.
I mean,
there are lots of stories about special forces units hunting these things down.
I mean, like, you can trace it further back than that. I mean, like, we've had this conversation here before, talking about how humans have uncanny valley for things that look suspiciously human but aren't quite human.
Mm-hmm.
Who's to say that there's not another creature out there that has the same thing for similar reasons? I mean, we're talking about a creature that has such a sparse population that we don't really know where to find it. And that could be easily explained by, at some point in our history, we hunted these things to damn near extinction. And some of them may want a little bit of revenge for that.
I went down a completely different road with that one, Noah. I was like, somewhere in the woods, there's a bunch of Bigfoot sitting around a fire going, well, they look almost Bigfoot, but not quite Bigfoot. They have no hair. They're bald. Their whole body's bald from the neck down.
These short, hairless apes are really starting to irritate me.
Yeah.
I think I'd be too terribly worried about something sneaking up on me that I could tear the arms off of.
Well, that's true, but I've been in a few tangles with raccoons that didn't do me very well. So I don't pay too much attention to size.
Gravity Cheeseburger says, when I moved into this apartment, I was awakened by what I thought was my hot water heater exploding. I wonder now if a Sasquatch had slapped the side of the building. It's not unheard of. I mean, especially if your hot water heater didn't explode.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's take a look at the evidence here. If your hot water heater exploded, it may have been your hot water heater exploding. I don't want to be like Captain Obvious or anything like that, but I think that's pretty cut and dry.
Well, you know, there are huge, and I mean huge, sections of undeveloped land. As much as people like to think that we've, you know, especially people that live in big cities seem to think that we've colonized everything useful about this country. There are places in the Mark Twain where it may have been more than 100 years before anybody even set foot in it. And then you get up into places like the Yukon Territory in Alaska. There are places, there are valleys and mountains where no human may have ever been.
At one time, and I don't know if this is still true, but
what's that? What was that, Robbie? Robbie, what'd you say?
I was going to say, well, the number you said the other day, wasn't it like 85 million acres?
Yeah, something like
that.
Miss Neilma, what were you going to say?
I was going to say at one point, and I'm not sure if this is still true, but there was actually more unexplored territory in North America than there was left in Africa. And that was I know that was something in the last 60 or 70 years that was true. Now that may not be true now, but even if it isn't true, there's still so much territory in North America that is maybe explored but not settled, where you could go weeks and months without human beings passing through that land. And people have a really hard time understanding that. They think, oh, this is the United States and every inch of it has been explored and or settled, and there's no way that these things could be running around us. Well, it's very easy for that to happen because there are places where people don't go for weeks and months on end, where it's just wildlife, just nature.
Yeah.
I don't know why I needed to make that point, but there you go.
Well, you know, you're absolutely right. And like I was saying, there are places in the Mark Twain National Forest, which is here in Missouri, which if you look at one end of the Mark Twain, you've got St. Louis, you've got Springfield down on the other end, and then we've got the cities along the Mississippi on the far side. The Mark Twain is right in the middle of some very big populated areas. However, there are valleys and areas of the Mark Twain that, like I said, there may not have been a human in them for 100 years or more.
And Naomi, I think you're still on the right track with the more of Africa being discussed or like surveyed than the United States, on account of like just take a tally of how many times there's been some sort of conquest through Africa, and take a tally of how many there's been here in North America. I can think of 2 wars between us and someone in Europe where they attacked us on our soil, and I can think of conquistadors going into what is now Mexico and Central America.
And then we can go back to a few of the pre-European civilizations that were, but you have to go back at this point close to 1,000 years to get to those.
Right. And I mean, you look at how many conquests have been taken up on Africa. I mean, you've got the Crusades, you've got the Romans attacking Carthage, you've got, you know, World War II when the Germans were advancing down into Africa. You've got the British going down into Africa, the Dutch going down into Africa. Like, there's a lot of attacks down there versus how many attacks have been on United States soil. So I'd reckon that there's a lot of the United States that we have absolutely no survey information on.
That was the word I was looking for, by the way.
With the Wind says people underestimate cryptids' abilities to live amongst humans and not be seen. Well, take the Pacific Northwest alone. There, I want to say it was, I can't remember. I want to say it was like 32 aircraft have gone down in the Pacific Northwest in the last 60 years that have never been found. And one of them was a DC-10, which is by no means a small aircraft. That's an area where it is populated. There are cities in that area, but the forests are still so dense that aircraft have gone down and never been found.
And nature has such a way of consuming what lays still on the forest floor that at this point it probably never will be found unless
Very
someone
much
goes
so.
in and starts digging down deep.
Or just happens to stumble across something exposed.
Yeah, and I mean, we're also talking animals that have natural camouflage. Like,
and don't want to be found.
Yeah, and they clearly have a likeness for not wanting to be seen, so they're going to utilize that.
Absolutely.
Louis Noriega says there's still a lot of parts of Canada that have not been touched by man. It's been photographed, but not literally walked through. That doesn't surprise me. Canada's got some massive areas that have no settlements in it at all. Growing Old with Purpose has got to go. We'll try reading The Awakening to see what I think. No promises, but I'll give it a try only because I like all your other books. Well, thank you. I hope you give it a try, and I hope you like it. What were you saying there, Rob?
I was going to say, we talked about Snell Grove Lake many times on the show. You can't get to it without going on a float plane. So it's not like that area is, walked by human foot very, very often. I mean, and there's many places like that on that continent that just, are just very, very suitable to sustain something like that.
Exactly. Perfect environment. Robert D says, but yet they never found the lion killer chimps till a few years ago in the Congo of all places. Yeah, they're called the Billy apes, Bili, the Billy region of the Virunga in the Congo. And the natives had been telling explorers about those things for years and years and years. There's these giant apes out there that are hunting lions, and they're like, oh, no way. Apes aren't meat eaters. There's no ape that does that. 1999, National Geographic catches them on camera for the first time, and suddenly, oh wait a minute. Yeah, there's this species of ape down there that'll make war on each other, and they walk bipedally and they kill lions.
Who named it?
Yeah. No, guarantee it was the first scientist that got a hold of one. It wasn't the guy that got it on camera.
Yeah. It's that guy at the British National Museum. That's who it was.
Oh no, that couldn't possibly exist.
Judy Davis had a question. She said, so the cryptids have plenty of room to live and hunt without coming to areas used by humans. So why are they? Well, I mean,
because we are fun to watch.
If somebody walks into my living room, if somebody just opens the door and just chills out in my living room, am I not going to still go into my living room? Am I just going to avoid them?
Well,
depends on what they look like.
I think to an extent, part of it is us encroaching into their territory. Yeah, there's plenty of room out there, but predators are always looking for new territory. And when predators find an easy source of prey, i.e. missing 411 cases and people that just go missing in national parks or go missing on the trail and at the edge of town, when they find an easy source of prey, they will come back again and again. Camo Dad 72 says, I'm wondering if the Vikings may have explored more of North America than a lot of Europeans. Another thing we don't know. Well, we know the Heavener runestone in Heavener, Oklahoma dates to the late 800s. I think they dated it to like 893 or something like that. And this isn't just a small rock with a few runes in it. It's a cliff face that has runes in it. And there was another runestone unearthed by a farmer in a field in, I want to say it was Minnesota. And that one's at the University of Minnesota, I believe now. But there have been runestones unearthed all across the U.S. That indicating the Vikings have been a lot farther than we gave them credit. And there was a language study done, and I've got to find the source for this one again, but because I remember reading the article. But there was a language study done, and they were studying certain words that were still used today in the Icelandic and Norwegian regions. And they found words that just were outliers that didn't pop up in other Norwegian languages. So they started doing cross-checking with other languages, and they found that there are certain words that appear in common in some of the Scandinavian dialects that are also Lakota. Which would indicate
I did not know that.
they met each other enough to exchange words and languages.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty freaking wild.
I know that the Appalachians, the Creek and those Indians, their language matches very closely with the Mayan language. Clearly, there was a lot of intertrade between them and the Mayans, but that would be natural. That would not be, a shock so much as something on the other side of the Atlantic.
True. Luis Noriega says, we found a B-24 bomber that was lost back in 1944 in the San Gabriel Mountains in 1982. So that thing was gone for 40 years before somebody stumbled across it. Anti-Venom says LiDAR would pick it up, and there are LiDAR scans available for public use. I would like, if you've got a resource on that where people can get LiDAR scans, I'd like to take a look at some of those, because I think there's some areas around here I would like to look at active LiDAR scans.
I was looking into the Heavner runes, like not too long ago. And from what I was seeing is like archaeologists were like looking at these runes and trying to match them to known translations of Elder Futhark and later Nordic languages. But they couldn't find a direct match. Like the words just didn't translate right. But some linguists were looking at them and being like, yeah, because these predate Elder Futhark.
Yeah, they're Proto-Norse.
Yeah, it's earlier than the Elder Futhark, which means it's very, very old.
Which is the exact same thing I used in Death and Dyatlov. The runes on the stone that they moved were Proto-Norse.
Like, yeah, the characters are the same as the Futhark, but it's like even if it's the same alphabet, is it the same language? We share an alphabet with Old English, but I can assure you those two languages are not the same.
True.
Well,
Uncle John's in the house. Hey, Uncle John.
Hey, Uncle John.
And then?
Sorry, I was looking back at some of the...
And then? Yeah.
I was looking back and see if I missed some questions.
They've been flying by.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say that the Heavner runes are kind of a spectacle. I would say that because there's no recorded instance of them being there. Oh, I thank you for the subscription. Who just came over. That was supposed to be rendered out. I don't know why the red showed up, but yeah, I mean, like, it's a bit of a spectacle, man. It's like there's no Norwegian, Icelandic, Swedish, Danish. There's no recorded history of them having been that far south, and there's no recorded history here of them having been that far south. So it just being there is incredibly odd, and it honestly is just like, if there was proto Nordic runes or proto Norse runes in Oklahoma, that means by the time that it wasn't Proto-Norse and was just Norse, they had explored a huge chunk of the world. They had been around. So who's to say what creatures they even ran into?
No kidding.
Well, they did. They were some of the most far-stretched and far-reached travelers, and whether it be they were raiding or trading, they're some of the most far-reached of any clan. I mean, I don't think there's as many European cultures that reach out into so many diverse other cultures as the Vikings. I mean, because look at how many cultures talk about Vikings.
Yeah, even they're documented. What we know, they definitely reached quite a range, as far east as Russia, as far west as God only knows, and down in to the southern part of Europe, and definitely they even what we is recognized as common history know that they were quite the travelers. They weren't afraid to get in the boat and go. Kind of what I like about them.
No.
Oh, so just two rabbits were walking down the street. And, no, two peanuts were walking down the street. And one of them was assaulted. Yeah. Saying.
But getting back to the Viking thing, I mean, if you look at the 13th Warrior and you read the actual book, The Eaters of the Dead.
Well, it's based on Beowulf.
Yeah, but you talk about some of the Tartars. It pretty much says in that book that the Tartars are not scared of anybody. They would raid, pillage, kill anybody. But, they mentioned it in the book, but they actually kind of elaborated it more on it in the movie. As soon as they saw the Northmen, they turned around and went the other way. So
yeah, but weren't some of those Norsemen coming at them naked with bear skins on their heads? Or
I mean, that scared the shit out of me too.
Probably so.
I wouldn't want to see that either.
Me neither. Well, I probably would because I'm a girl, but I'd still want to see it at a distance. I mean,
I think there's a big distinction to make there, Naoma. If he's running at you wearing nothing but a bearskin and wielding an axe, I think fear is the first response.
You don't know me well.
You, not him.
My first instinct is to get out the camera because nobody's going to believe this. But yeah, no, you're right.
Hey, folks, I will be right back.
Where I was going with that is, most cultures feared, the Vikings, Northmen, Norse, whatever you want to call them. They were respected and feared. So to hear them talk about those big hairy, however they, but you know what I'm talking about now,
right? Yeah,
for them to be chased out of New England and Nova Scotia,
for something to run them off, that's saying something, because the Vikings didn't run from too much.
You also have to take into account the Europeans referred to the Vikings as giants. Like you look at old like even English, like British texts, they talk about how the Norsemen stood a good head and a half taller than them on average.
So, yeah, they were like on average 6 feet tall when
they described these Vikings as giant men. So for the Vikings to describe something as giant, that kind of puts things into perspective.
Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, the Norsemen were on average 6 feet tall, and the average European was right around 5'3", 5'4" at the time. So definitely,
they were dock-sized.
So yeah, and to imagine, to reverse that and to think, okay, something that would see a Viking as bite size would had to have been 7 feet tall or more.
Yeah.
That's scary. Definitely. I mean, it'd be a reason for me to get back on the boat. You know? Well, it was nice knowing you guys. We're gonna go back over to.
Yeah, you
others.
you go to step off your longboat and you see Hiroki up ahead of you just get picked up by like a 10-foot tall hairy man, and you're like, no, guys, pack it up. Nah, this ain't the place for us. We got places to be, boys. And being fought by a giant gorilla is not one of the places I want to be. So
Exactly.
But think about what they had to have seen and what it had to have done to them to run them off. I mean, because this was just like when you think of a warrior back then, I mean, how many people don't think of Vikings when they think of medieval warriors that are
Vikings or Romans? That's usually what people think of.
So for something to run the Vikings off, it had to be.
Honestly, it probably took a hell of a lot of them with it. Like you got to keep in mind, like these guys wouldn't run unless they knew they had to. So I mean, like it's a situation in which like they step off the boat, they start setting up their settlement, right? They start setting up their little home away from home, as it were, and then something just starts showing up and destroying their buildings while they're sleeping and stuff like that. When they come out, they can't find it. But then it starts getting more bold. And when it finally shows up, they try to fight it, and it just takes them out like they are not even trying to fight it. Like at that point, it's like, oh, I can see that we are clearly outmatched. We need to go.
It's interesting.
Very.
Yeah, I would just love to really get into more of those riding. I mean, I don't think there was a couple of passages, DA, where they talked about that. I'd love to be.
There's not a lot.
Because it's fascinating to think about something like that, what they saw and what was going through their mind. Like Noah said, because they're going to jump on and attack just about anything they see. So they had to got their tails whipped pretty soundly to say, okay, time, like Noah said, time to pack it in, boys. Let's go.
Pack it up, pack it in, let me begin. Oh yeah, and my point was like, it probably killed a number of them before they were like, look at the time, Like I'd be amazed if we could go up there and potentially find like fossilized remains from an attack, like
with teeth marks.
Yes, I mean. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities because, again, like I said, we're talking about warriors that didn't run.
Right. Retreat wasn't an option.
Mm-hmm.
Gravity Cheeseburger says, I wonder if Sasquatch or Dogman had anything to do with the lost city of Roanoke. It's possible. We discussed that on the show we did on Roanoke. There was writings from the time, and I want to say it was John Smith, I believe. I can't remember.
Yes,
that
John Smith
reported trading with a group of Native Americans that were large and hairy.
The redheaded giants.
Yeah, the redheaded giants.
So,
and this was not far from there.
That's
I know I've still got the article somewhere.
there was something else that when we did that show that was, I can't remember what there was something else that may have been where we were talking about the Vikings and their description of that too. That may be what I'm thinking of, but there was something else we were talking about. But I think that might have been what we were just talking about with the Vikings and them describing. The only thing that makes me kind of have pause about about Bigfoot having anything or Sasquatch either one is the condition they found the colony in. It's like everything was taken down. It wasn't destroyed; it was taken down. So
Dismantled.
Picked up and left.
yeah, it was It was dismantled. The Palisades were still intact. The walls on the outside, but all the buildings on the inside were dismantled, taken down, and moved out. That's weird as far as
because it would have been easier just to burn it in place.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have stopped to strike the match. I'm telling you guys. I'd have been like, I'm on the boat. Why aren't you here with me? I'm leaving. I'm sorry.
You mean to tell me something has been systematically hunting us down and killing us while we sleep? Yeah, no, I'm not worried about my bad boys. We got cots on the ship.
We are not going to sit around the fire and discuss this, all right?
But see, that's the thing. They didn't have that we know of. They didn't have another ship because the ship had left and went back to England to resupply.
Right.
So this was just a colony. This was supposed to be the first colony in America, and it actually. How many miles did we say, DA, it was off? Because it was not actually supposed to be on Roanoke. It's supposed to be on another set of islands out there on the Outer Banks.
It was one of the Outer Banks.
Yeah, because they missed it because of the storm. And then another storm was what it messed up. It like tore the anchor off of another ship. So it couldn't anchor. So they had to turn around and go back. So it was actually a year longer before they got back that they were supposed to, and everything was gone, and all they could find was the Palisades, nothing on the inside, and then the word Croatoa written on the Palisades on the outside.
There's still debate on what Croatoa actually meant.
I thought it was Croatoan.
Croatoa.
Was it?
One or the other. You know, there's a South American city that has a very similar. It's a modern day version. It happened in the last century.
Really?
But it's green, something verde, and there's some debate as to whether or not it's actually a true story. But essentially, it was a small village in. I wish I could remember what country. Darn it. You know what? Maybe I have it written down here. And it was, Hoerverde, or Verde. And I guess it was a small village, and there was a school there. And people noticed that no one from that village showed up for market day in the closest market town. And so they went looking, and there was not a soul there. There was one word written on the blackboard, and I don't remember what that word was, but it's very, very Roanoke Island-esque. And so it's really an interesting story. Obviously, so interesting, I remembered all the details. I can't help it. My brain is old. It doesn't absorb things like it used to. But yeah, it's kind of weird because the Hoer is a Dutch word, and I don't remember what it means, but of course verde is green. And so it's kind of got a weird name for a town like that. And I want to say it was in northern Brazil, in that sort of area. It's definitely somewhere in the Amazon water system, whatever they call that. And they just there's never been anybody found from there at all. Every one of them vanished to a person.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, and just the one cryptic message on the blackboard, and I believe it was just one word. So, and I don't know what made me.
And another thing about Roanoke, touching a little bit more on what Kay was talking about. There was actually a study done with some of the indigenous people, and they do have like blue eyes and blonde hair and brown hair and stuff like that in it. So I'm sure there probably was some integration, but there's no way to know if that entire colony, and we're talking like 120 something people that just up and vanished. So even if they did integrate, they should have been able to locate them because if they integrated, they should have been able to find them, but there was no trace of them. So where did they go?
Good point.
If it was just a simple fact that, okay, they didn't know that if they were coming back or not, and they just made friends with the locals and they integrated, they should have been able to find them. Eventually at some point somebody's going to show up. Oh yeah, hey, we've been hanging out with with this tribe, but there was nothing. So I mean,
right. The next expedition searched the area pretty intently, and you would think if they just like integrated into the local population, somebody would have been like, "Yeah, hey, I was part of that colony. We just kind of went over here and did our own thing."
Yeah, and and then not only did they search the area on that island, that they went back and actually searched the Croatoan Islands that were supposedly where they were supposed to be, because they thought that's what Croatoa meant. Was okay. Well, maybe they left and packed up and went these islands because that was where they were supposed to land in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody there, but now they have done some dredging around that in that area of the Outer Banks, and they have found like pottery and maybe some coins and some stuff like that from that time frame. But still, just finding that doesn't mean that, because that could have been from anybody from that was there during that time. But at least it's kind of okay, we know they were here at least.
So do you know the story of the sacred island that's supposed to be hidden in the Okefenokee swamp? So according to I believe it's Creek again, legend, there's an island there, and it's an island of giant people who are beautiful beyond anything you could imagine, and basically the goddess of the sun lives there. And I really need to look this up before I start talking, because I don't want to sound like an idiot. But I'm trying to put together in my mind a scenario. So what if this island was inhabited by Scandinavians, who would definitely be paler and would be
taller,
perceived as being of the sun, much taller, so they would be perceived as being giants. And that is who was on that island. Now, there was supposed to be a fort there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the story where back in the 1800s, sometime there was a drought, and so a couple of guys decided they were going to go try to find the island, and they ran into something that was pretty gigantic, but not necessarily pretty, and they ran out. And then 5 men in the town that they ran to got together and decided, I think it was 5 men. It may have been more than that, but I know there were at least 5, because they went hunting for this thing. So they decided that they didn't want any giant hairy thing living near them that might hurt them. And so they went hunting for them. And after about 3 or 4 days in, they came across it, and it killed 5 of them. And but what they were looking for was that island. When they came across this thing, or well, the first 2 were they were looking for the island because it was supposed to be full of all kinds of gold and treasures. And I'm just wondering if that island was actually a place where maybe, Vikings had set up house. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be a comfortable place for people who are used to a cold environment, but it might have been a secure place because, to get to anything in the swamp is always going to be treacherous. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a lot of good eating in the swamp.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I have to agree with you there.
I mean, you survive in a swamp for a long time if you know what you're doing.
Or you can die in the swamp real fast if you don't.
I just like the idea of the first Viking to hunt and kill an alligator and cook it. He's just like, guys, come try this. He's like the dragon is delicious.
That's so funny.
Like, what the hell is this thing that you've cooked? I don't know, but it tastes great.
There's a lot of meat on it.
I just
Fry
put
it up.
I tell you what, it was a bastard to kill, but like, I'd be pretty tough to kill if I tasted this good.
Yeah, I'd find a reason to live. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's not something that's ever been suggested in anything I've read, but I thought it was kind of an interesting concept listening to what you guys are saying. Possibly that's where those people of the sun came from.
Maybe.
And, they worshiped the sun, and whoever the female was they saw her as being the goddess of the sun. So, and she had a name that is so common today that probably seems so unusual and beautiful then, but it's like, her name was like Amanda or something like that. Maybe it was Amanda. I can't remember.
That just sparked the idea of it just being named something mundane by today's standards. Just like, oh
Bob.
yeah, this is our sun goddess, Charlotte. Susan, get a load of her.
Yeah. Hey, Kate. Definitely.
It's just like super mundane, and everyone's like, wow, what a beautiful name. We've never heard a name like that before. I mean, while we're looking back, like, was their name really just like...
Yeah. It couldn't have been pronounced that way, right? Seriously, that they didn't pronounce it, Bert. Because that'd be too easy. But yeah, it is a name that when I looked at it, I was like, somebody was cheating there because they didn't want to look up the real name. But then I found several sources where that really was her name, and I thought, holy cow. So, yeah. Anyway. So I haven't heard anything from your sponsors tonight. Have you talked about them?
No, we hadn't. Robbie, you want to talk about Scallywag?
Sure. All right. Most of y'all know we are very, very supportive of our veteran-owned companies on this channel, and Scallywag Tactical is a veteran-owned company. Makes some of the best knives that you will ever get a hold of. This is the Dew Claw. I believe it's still available, right, DA? And I know it's going to be discontinued, but I believe it's still available right now. They've got folders, fixed blade, kitchen knives, boarding axes. I mean, pretty much any kind of cutlery, daggers.
There are a lot of items still on sale on the blemished blades too.
You got stuff to shave your face. You got stuff to cut your stuff in your kitchen, and you got stuff to board a ship at sea if you like.
You got stuff to keep the neighbors' kids in their own damn backyard.
Whatever your taste or flavor of the day, they got you covered. You use code DA Roberts 10 and you get 10% off of your order. And that does stack up with the Blemish blades too. So you can get, and don't worry about the Blemish blade thing, because 10 out of 10 has usually been the box is what's blemished, not the blade. Matter of fact, this one right here was a Blemish blade, and there's not anything at all wrong with this knife. I've used it every day since I've got it, and it's still. Let me get my. As Steve says, since we've been doing so good, getting my new paper. And that is not.
That sounded cool.
There's not been. I have not put this on any stone at all. This is just. That's straight out of the box. So, yeah, if you like a good sharp knife, Scallywag's where to go. Like I said, use code DA Roberts 10 to get 10% off. Stacks up with the Blemish blade sale as well. Check them out. I mean, every one of us here has got at least one, if not multiple. I know DA's probably got more than all the rest of us put together, but
I've got a few.
They're worth it. So Noah can go borrow some of his. So
hey, listen.
He's got enough for you to borrow, Noah.
Me and Cutlery don't exactly have an excellent standing with each other, and got some nerve damage in my left hand. It's probably best to keep him away from me, anyways.
Naomi, you got one of the folders, I think, don't you?
One of the folders? No, I don't. I don't carry any kind of weapon whatsoever because I will kill you.
I thought you had one. But
yeah, no, I wish I did, but no.
Doc's got a bunch of them. I've got a bunch of them. DA's got a bunch of them. They're great knives. I mean, they're well worth the money.
Excellent knives.
You're not going to be. I used to carry a Kershaw every day on my duty gear, and my Scallywag Tactical, the Orca, has become my everyday carry for the police department.
Doyle Thorne says, got my blemished gunner's mate. It's awesome. Couldn't find the blemish. Probably just the box.
Yep.
Judy Davis says, I just got my Scallywag utility knife Friday. Cut my thumb right out of the box. I thought I'd try it on a sweet potato. Cut it like butter all the way to my thumb. They are sharp.
Yeah. DA was trying to do a demonstration and got himself a little boo-boo on it too, didn't you, DA?
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite moments.
You got to be careful with those things because they are wicked sharp.
Yes, they are.
We thought we were going to have to call DA the Black Knight.
It's only a flesh wound. The kitchen set I got one of the chef's knives out and was cutting potatoes with it the other day. And you can ask Noah. I had the potatoes on the cutting block, and it was just going right through it, just right through those potatoes. Wouldn't put any effort in it at all. And I was cutting them pretty thin, like potato chips.
I was cutting sausage for jambalaya the other day, and just out of curiosity, I was like, I wonder how thin I can chop a little bit of the sausage. So I cut just a couple of pieces of it, right? And it was so thin you could almost read through those slices of sausage. And I was like, huh, okay. And I just popped the two pieces in my mouth, and then I was like, okay, whatever. Chop, chop, chop.
Point proven.
Well, Scallywags, they not just their kitchen knives, but all their utility knives, their daily use knives. Every knife I've gotten from them has just been absolutely a fantastic blade. And I carry at least one every day. Everywhere I go, I have a pocket knife on me. And I was like that before Scallywag, but after discovering Scallywag, I won't leave home without one. They're part of my everyday carry kit now. So go buy Scallywag Tactical.com or go use the link that's on the screen now or is in the chat. And use discount code DARoberts10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order, and that includes the on-sale blemished blades. And as you can see from the comments in the audience, and from what Robbie and I were both saying, every blemished knife I've ever got from them, there was something wrong with the box. They couldn't sell it as new because there was something wrong with the box. The blade itself was fine, and I don't keep the boxes. I don't buy them for display knives, and I don't want a blade that just hangs on a shelf and looks good.
Man, I don't get anything unless it's full tang, and at least capable of defending me.
Judy Davis says, I also got my son a Jolly Roger, so he'd leave mine alone. His was a blemish, but you couldn't tell. He loves it. Absolutely. Those are awesome knives. And let me bring up the banner for the other one.
Once you get your Scallywag tactical knife, you might need this one.
This might. Doc couldn't be here tonight because he is busy at the shop, and he's got a flight out at 4:30 in the morning for a class. So he said he might not even be with us on Saturday. Doc's a busy man lately, and that's the way we like it. As we just, Dark Angel Medical deserves some success. They are just an outstanding company. I carried one of their med kits the entire time I was on duty. I would not recommend, if you're a first responder, you need one of these kits with you. Even if all you do is go hunting, fishing, camping, backpacking, cryptid hunting, I would highly recommend having one of these kits on hand. Because they've got kits all the way from the basic ouch pouch, which has got essential basic first aid, what I call ibuprofen and band-aids, but they've got kits from the everyday carry kit, which can deal with mild trauma, including tourniquet. Then you've got your more advanced trauma kits like the dark kit. I carried a dark on my duty belt for 10 years. And odds were really good. Had I ever needed it, it was probably going to be because I got shot. Having one of those kits on hand it's a life-saving device. And if you ever get out off the trail where basic 911 can't get to you, it may be all that stands between you and bleeding out. But go by Dark Angel Medical. Again, they're a veteran-owned company, and we are proud to support our veteran-owned companies as much as we support our veterans' charities like the 22 a Day Foundation. But check out Dark Angel Medical and, use the link that's on the screen or the link that's popped up in the chat. And don't forget to use discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your entire order. And if you're a fan of the Codename Wild Hunt books, at checkout on the notes, put either Team Odin or Codename Wild Hunt, and you'll get a little Team Odin rocker above the first aid patch on the kit itself. So definitely go check them out and tell Doc we sent you.
Hell, whenever me and the guys go out to the range, we take one of their kits with us. It's handy to have. It's very worthwhile to keep with you. So, even if you're not doing any sort of exploring in the woods, if you're just going to the range every now and then to cook off rounds, it's good to have one on hand because you never know when you're going to need it.
Miss Naoma, thank you for jumping in and helping out. Me and Noah were kind of floundering there for a bit. And Rip, I'm glad you were able to get here. Sorry the game didn't go quite your way, but you get them next time.
Take them to the train station.
Take them to the train station. Folks, thank you guys for tuning in and joining us tonight. I apologize. I am kind of off my game tonight. My back is killing me. When we started out the show, it wasn't too bad, but it's kind of gotten steadily worse. So I'm going to get on my heat pad and my recliner after I get off of here. But thank you guys, for tuning in and hanging out with us this Wednesday evening. I will try to have the show up for Saturday long before, an hour before the show goes live, like I did this time. But appreciate you guys, and appreciate the prayers and support. And I'm going to get off here and like I said, get on my heat pad because my back is pretty much flared up pretty bad. They're saying it could be as much as 6 weeks before this procedure takes full effect. So I may have some rocky days ahead in the next few weeks until things start sorting out. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We'll see you guys on Saturday night. And again, we've said it before. I'll say it again. We don't have fans. We have friends. We appreciate each and every one of you guys spending time with us. And we love hanging out with you guys and talking about crazy cryptids and bizarre situations and the strange happenings throughout the world. And we hope to continue to do so for a good long time to come. So y'all be safe. Thank you guys again for spending your Wednesday evening with us, and we will see you guys on Saturday night. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAX Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.